Hey guys, welcome to PreSonus Live. I'm Rick Knockvey.
And I'm Dominic Bazil.
And we're here to celebrate the release of
Studio One 3.5. This is a new Studio One update. It includes over 50 new enhancements and features, of which includes a redesigned project page, also an optimized low latency audio engine, and then also the #1 Studio One requested feature.
Whoa.
I won't tell you about it right now, but just stay tuned and you'll find out what it is.
Right on. And how much does this new update cost Studio One owners?
This new update's going to be absolutely zero. Free.
That means bagel. So that's going to be a free download to your Studio One, to your My PreSonus account, so you can go down and get the update. And then also today we're going to be giving away a lot of great prizes to
of course,
three of you lucky people out there.
Right, we have a pair of R80 monitors as well as two Studio One Pros to give away.
Right on. So all you have to do is share hashtag Studio One, all spelled out, and don't forget to share the link. Now, not in the chat, share it on social media.
Right.
And we're going to pick 3 lucky winners for the prizes. And we've got a lot of great stuff to show you with today's PreSonus Live, so tune in. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So we're back here.
Yeah.
And we're about to show you some really cool stuff with the new version of Studio One, version 3.5. It's a free update. But also, just like I mentioned a few minutes ago, make sure you go ahead and share hashtag Studio One, all written out, with a link to this webcast on social media. And we're going to pick 3 winners in a little while to win a pair of R80 studio monitors.
and 2 Studio One Pros.
Right on.
Yep.
So make sure you share that. And so let's jump right into the Studio One 3.5. So
Great,
Dominic,
awesome.
show us some new stuff.
Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff. As I mentioned, there are over 50 new enhancements and features, bug fixes in this version of Studio One 3.5. We're only going to show you a couple of them today just for the sake of time, but of course when you download Studio One 3.5, you want to make sure you get the release notes so that you get the full list of features that have been added. So let's start with this new optimized low latency audio engine. So the challenge with recording audio, and I'm pretty sure you've run into this, Rick, is that when you start recording, you need to balance between low latency monitoring and CPU processing. Well, early on in your project, when you have one track of maybe guitar or a couple of tracks of drums, it's not such a big deal. You can monitor from the software with low latency, no problem. However, when you start adding additional tracks and processing, well, then your CPU meter starts to go up, and then you might start experiencing pops and crackles and audio dropouts. So what we did in Studio One 3.5 was optimize the audio engine for low latency monitoring. So we added this new feature, and let's take a look at the audio setup page in Studio One. We added this new feature. Here's your audio setup page where you would select your audio device and you would set your device block size. So 64 samples, that's pretty low. Yeah. That's going to give you some low latency monitoring.
Right.
But we added this new processing page. And so because once you start adding processing and that sort of thing in tracks, you get dropouts. We added dropout protection. So this is a setting here that you can increase by selecting one of these options here. And what that's going to do is actually increase the buffer size of all of your playback tracks. This is going to give you more CPU processing power for all of your playback tracks, but it's also going to retain the low latency buffer size of your recorded tracks.
Oh, that's so cool. So in other words, what that does is, even though, like, let's say if I have a session with 60 tracks and we need to like recut a vocal, for example, with 60 tracks with a bunch of virtual instruments and a bunch of plugins, I probably would want a bigger, buffer size to be able to accommodate all of that. But the cool thing about this is it will allow me to have the bigger buffer size for all my playback tracks, but as soon as I hit record enable on that vocal track, that vocal track will have a very small buffer size for low latency monitoring. Is that right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly how it works. So, you can get your low latency while not having to deal with pops and crackles and dropouts and that sort of thing.
Or you don't have to go back and turn off plugins and freeze tracks and do all that kind of stuff.
Right, exactly, exactly. So streamlining a workflow for you, it's actually pretty amazing. I've used it myself. And then along with this, you can actually do native low latency 'y monitoring. So some users may use hardware products that have hardware monitoring, but now because of this, you can have native low latency monitoring and actually record with your plugins on your inputs. So let's kind of show you some of that. So back in Studio One, let's expand our inputs here. And you've always been able to add inserts or plugins to your inputs. And we're going to have to choose an input here. All right, expand that.
Yeah, so you can see our microphones are coming through on those tracks, right?
Right. And so every input of your audio interface, you're able to add an insert. All right, so say we're recording guitars and we wanted to add an amplifier. We could very well do that. Let me choose another track here.
So we don't add distortion on our vocals, right?
Exactly. And we're going to add an amplifier. So say, for instance, this was our guitar input track and we wanted to add amplifier. So in essence, what we're doing here is we're actually recording through amplifier onto the track. So we're printing that to the track.
Sweet.
And because of this new optimized low latency audio engine, we can do this at a very low latent level. What you would also want to do is every output in Studio One will now have this Z option here, and you would want to enable that. So now this gives you that native low latency processing so that you can,
Track
track with your plugins without having to deal with a lot of latency.
That's awesome. Now this will actually, like you said, it'll actually print the plugin to the track, right?
Right.
As opposed to running it just as a plugin on the actual audio track, where if I put Empire there, I can monitor with the plugin, but I'm not actually printing it.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so
exactly.
now you have a choice to do either way.
Right, and you don't have to rely on hardware DSP processing to achieve low latency monitoring. Now with Studio One 3.5, you can do this all from the software.
That's killer.
We also added this option and extended it to software instruments. So now even software instruments can benefit from low latency monitoring. If you open, as I open the instrument panel here, you see all the virtual instruments in this particular track. And at the top, you see, again, the Z. This is automatically enabled for you. You can turn it off if you want. But if you want to take advantage of the software low latency optimization, you would definitely want that on. So again, it's doing that kind of dual buffer thing where your playback tracks are operating at a higher buffer size to prevent audio dropouts and pops and crackles. But on your recorded track,
right,
you're actually getting low latency.
Yeah, that's really great. So you don't really have to, kind of compromise, to get very, very low latency. You can't really run a bunch of plugins or have a bunch of virtual instruments just kind of sitting there. This way now, anytime I record and enable a track, it's automatically going to be low latency. And even if I have 100 tracks with a bunch of plugins,
right,
you can kind of have both at the same time.
Right,
Very
definitely.
Cool.
It works awesome. It's definitely a great improvement. I think you guys are going to love it.
Sweet.
All right, moving on. Another big feature for Studio One 3.5 is going to be the redesign of the project page. So here in Studio One 3, I have a project. And our project page is basically a mastering application.
Right.
So you can built into Studio One. It's all integrated. You can sequence your tracks, add processing, get it ready for digital release or CD mastering, and that sort of thing. So here's a project I have open, and some of the new things in the new redesign project page, we've kind of cleaned up the UI a little bit, streamlined some things. For instance, in your track view over here, we give you some alternate views. Before, you would always have this particular
big view, right.
But now you can collapse it. So if you have tons of tracks there, you can view them all.
And then I can just drag and drop tracks around to change the order.
Exactly,
right here,
exactly.
just like
it
you
works
can always
just
do.
the same. Also, we did some optimizations for adding metadata, making it easier to add metadata to multiple tracks in your project without having to retype everything.
Really nice.
Concerning loudness information, we still have that, but now we give you the option to view your loudness data either pre-effects or post-effects. So that's a handy new feature. You also notice in this little panel right here some new options. We've added in our level meter, in our level metering options, new EBU R128 options. This is a standard for loudness in broadcasting. So for those working in post, or you're mixing audio to send for TV, film, that sort of thing, you definitely want to be in compliance with the loudness standards that are out there. And now Studio One 3.5 gives you the tools to monitor in loudness units or LUFS. Just
Pre
to
or
show
post
you,
effects too.
Correct. And just to show you what that looks like, here's our loudness meter, and then you'll see you can tab between loudness units or LUFS. It gives you all of the data there. You can also do it per track. It'll process it offline for you.
That's a very cool new meter view there.
Right, you notice the spectrogram or the spectrometer right here is different now. We added some new options, so aside from the third octave and the FFT options that we had before, we now have a new segments view, and also averaging. You can turn that off if you like. And then we also give you a 12-octave scale. So now you can actually do your audio
In notes almost.
in notes.
Right.
Yeah, you can pick out a key of the song by doing that.
That's really
very
cool.
handy, very handy. Also, one of the new options for the project page is the track markers. Track markers are no longer attached to a audio file. You can move them and add them and remove them
That's really great.
freely throughout the project. We also give you options for being able to combine a track marker with the adjacent track, so you can make one track multiple songs, or you can split without having to actually split your audio. So you could take a live recording,
Right.
maybe something you did on the StudioLive, just a stereo file, throw it into the project page, and then be able to section it off or split it up into different tracks for digital release or burning to CD.
Yeah, and I think another big request with this where this feature comes in handy is if you wanted to do like a secret song or something like that, right?
Right,
Is that
definitely.
right?
If you want to do a hidden song where it plays for a long time, before it actually comes.
Yeah,
in,
you've got like 5 minutes of silence,
right,
and
exactly.
then all of a sudden,
I remember those.
yeah, those are
kinda
cool.
Catch you off guard.
That's right.
So there are other
Very
enhancements in the project page. Like I said before, they'll all be in the release notes when you download Studio 135.
That's cool. Hey, before we go on, I also just want to quickly remind everybody that we are going to be giving away some prizes in a few minutes. If you haven't done so, go ahead and share hashtag Studio1, all spelled out, with a copy of the link to this webcast, any social media platform, not the chat. The chat's not a social media platform. Just share it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Hashtag Studio1, and we're going to be giving away some prizes. So proceed.
All right, awesome. So moving on, let's talk about the #1 feature request for Studio One.
Whoa,
Yeah,
number one feature request.
And actually, how do we know it's the #1 feature request?
Well, that's I thought you'd never ask. So just for those of you that may not know about this, about 2 years ago, maybe not even 2 years ago, a year and a half, we created a new part of sort of interacting with customers, and it's at the URL answers.presonus.com. Answers.presonus.com. So this is a place where you, any customer, can basically, first of all, get answers. So it's kind of like, Yahoo Answers or something like that. But the other thing that we did is we put feature requests. And the idea here is that if there's a feature that you wish was on your StudioLive or on Studio One or your PreSonus product, you can post it, and the whole user community votes on if they want that feature. Now, the cool thing about this is that you might go to answers.presonus.com and post a feature request. Make sure you search first, because there's a good chance that if it's something that you want, maybe somebody else has already requested it, and then all you have to do is vote it up. And one of the cool things about this is that it allows us at PreSonus, and specifically our product management team and our QA team, to basically be able to see what do customers want. I mean, a lot of times we'll try to come up with features that we think are cool, but we really do want to listen to what people want, and so this was the #1 feature. So let's just have a look at answers.presonus.com, and we'll go ahead and sort by feature requests, and look at this. It got 475 votes for undo on the faders.
Undo on faders.
So this is one of the new features for Studio One 3.5. So show us how that works.
Awesome. All right, so let's go back to our Studio One song here. Dismiss that. All right, so how does this work, undo on faders? Well, it does exactly how it says. You make a fader movement. I'm going to use a shortcut here for undo, and it undoes that fader movement. But what if you do multiple fader movements? Maybe some panning. You'll be able to undo all of that.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And this not only works on faders and panning, but it also works on sends. It also works on plugins.
Plugins, that's awesome.
When you make plugin adjustments. So let's see. So I have a Pro EQ here. Maybe I did some notching there, some lift there. Move it over, widen it or narrow it. All right, maybe I made some other changes. What if I'm way down the line? I'm 30 minutes into this mix, and you know, I'm like, I'm having some doubts about it. Maybe it sounded better 30 minutes ago. Well, what do you do? Well, in Studio One, we have a history. So now you can pull up your history, and it'll have all of your
movements.
And you can go back to any point. See, there are my adjustments in the EQ. And then so you can go 30 minutes before and check your mix to see how it sounded.
That's
say,
freaking great.
do I like this? And then bounce right back to your current position.
So kind of A/B.
You can kind of A/B it and see, you know, if it sounded better or not, and see if you're going in the right direction there.
Yeah, and this is a really nice way to work. I mean, you know, a lot of times what I will do is I'll save a new version. You know, that's one of the cool things about Studio One is you don't actually have to save as a new name. You can just save a new version within a song. But, you know, sometimes it's just quicker to just be like, you know what, undo, and just go back like a few steps, you know. Because usually you kind of know, and being able to see the history is nice because you can actually, you know, say, okay, here's 30 minutes ago, here's now,
right, it's
here's
all
30
time
minutes ago.
stamped, so you know exactly, you know, where you were at what point in time. You can just jump to that spot and check it out and make your decision from there. It's very cool. That's the #1 most requested feature for Studio One.
Right on. So just again, if you just tuned in, we found out that that was the #1 requested feature for Studio One because you voted for it. And where do you go to vote? You go to answers.presonus.com, and then you can see there's all kinds of questions and answers that you can post, but there's a specific, on the right-hand side, there's a specific tab for feature requests. So feel free to search that feature request area and see if there's a feature that you want and vote it up. And that's something that we really take seriously around here. So,
Definitely.
you know, please take advantage of it.
Want to hear from you guys.
Right
Definitely.
on.
So moving on. More features in Studio One 3.5. This next one is basically adding functionality for our new StudioLive Series 3 mixers. So in Studio One, I've opened up a template for StudioLive 32. And in 3.5, we're now giving you the ability to actually control the preamps of your StudioLive Series 3 right from Studio One.
And phase reverse and 48-volt
And
phantom
48
power.
volt.
Now I tell you a really, really very, very usable reason that we did this. And for those of you that are using one of the new Series 3 consoles for studio application, maybe not necessarily for live, because I've seen a lot of people that are using these in the studio. Well, you know, let's say a band comes in to record, you get this, you know, great sound in their headphones, everything, you know, mic pre-gains are all set. And then a month later, they come in and they say, man, we want to recut the drums on that song. Well, all of your preamp settings will also basically save to that song. So when you come back a month later and open up that song, your StudioLive mixer will also open up to wherever those settings were. So that is a really, really cool thing because you can save those preamp settings to that, you know, particular song you were working on, and then come back, you know, whenever you want and have them recall without having to save a scene on the mixer. It's just part of your Studio One song. Right,
definitely. And just like with our RM mixers and Studio 192, you also have control over the hardware onboard DSP processing of the StudioLive 32 mixers. So again, on each channel strip in Studio One, you'll see this
the blue
fat channel, and it's going to say onboard DSP, and this is going to be basically a control GUI. So you're controlling the onboard DSP
on the mixer.
On the mixer, so you have control over, you know, all of the dynamics, the high pass, compressor, EQ, everything.
Right.
And with our Series 3 mixers, we have the new compressor and EQ models. So
Right.
you'll also have that to control in Studio One as well.
So there's the tube compressor and the
There's the
standard,
standard,
and then you've
and then
got
the
the FET
FET.
compressor. So just a you know, a really cool little word about how we came up with these models. And if you're a StudioLive Series 3 customer, you have already heard these on your StudioLive mixer. And these were created by several of our geniuses in Hamburg, part of the Hamburg PreSonus software team. One guy in particular I want to shout out to is Christian. Christian is actually our guy within our team that specializes in analog modeling, actually has a PhD in analog modeling. And these are not just, you know, kind of what we think, you know, a FET-based compressor or tube compressor should sound like. We actually went and got vintage compressors and EQs, and it's a circuit by circuit model down to the circuit level, and it's really great to be able to have it on your console. But one of the new features
Yeah, so
in
one of the new
Studio One
features,
3.5,
so we have the compressor and the EQ models. And of course, just like with the RM and the Studio 192, you can go from DSP processing with a simple drag and drop from the DSP one into your inserts.
there it is. So now we have a native plug-in version of this DSP processing, new compressor models, new EQ models for every Studio One Pro user out there.
Exactly.
So you can use it on any interface, whether it's PreSonus or not. And so now you have, of course, like you always had with the Fat Channel plugin, you had EQ, compressor, limiter, but now within the compressor and within the EQ, you have the option to have, on the compressor side, a FET-based compressor, a vintage tube compressor, and then on the EQ side, you have a passive tube EQ, and you also have a vintage British EQ. I can't say names or I'll get sued. So you probably can
You know
tell
what they are.
from the GUI what they are, but they're the real things.
Yeah, and
Modeled.
these are bit for bit reproductions of what's on the actual mixers, so it's the exact same process.
Yeah, so that's great. So basically, you know, if you do have a Series 3 console, you already have this built into the hardware. But when you take your mix and you're trying to recreate it, now you have it in a plug-in form. But even if you have, you know, a $99 audio box, you also have this now available, you know, if you're a Studio One professional user. So that's freaking cool, man.
Yeah, pretty awesome, pretty awesome. So that's the Fat Channel XT, now in native version for Studio One 3.5. The next few features are, some are related to Notion. So with Notion, you now have an improved note and audio exchange between Notion and Studio One. You can now import audio or notes in pre-existing documents. So before, when you would do the exchange between Studio One and Notion, it would actually open up a new document. Where now you can actually exchange note and audio information into an existing document. So you can open those up. So it's improved Notion and Studio One transfer functionality.
So for those of you that may not be familiar with Notion, about 3 years ago, has it been 3 years? Probably about 3 years. PreSonus acquired a company called Notion that does the #1 selling iPad app in the world for music notation, and they also have an amazing platform for music notation on Mac and PC. So one of the cool things about that is if you do have the desire to you know, write music notation, Notion is an amazing platform. It's very, very simple. And because we have this iPad app, it's completely integrated with the desktop app. So you can start a composition on an iPad, you know, open it up on your desktop, go back and forth,
Right.
print out lead sheets for people, you know, email them a file, they can open it up on their iPad, that kind of a thing. But one of the purposes is we wanted to have this really cool integration because, you know, a lot of people that want to, you know, write out a composition using music notation also want to take it and, you know, experiment with it and turn it into a song and that kind of a thing. So we created this great kind of workflow with Studio One and Notion kind of talking to each other. So that's what you're talking about, has been greatly improved in version 3.5.
Right, definitely.
Right on.
Also, we have some other improvements with bouncing, saving, and save as, now improved. Going to be faster, so before when you would get larger sessions, it may take a little longer to save the background. The autosave is going to be faster. You're not going to notice it as much now. Also, because of that, the new format of Studio One songs is a little different. So when you try out these features, make sure you save a copy of your pre-existing song, because you won't be able to go back into past versions
Right.
of Studio One once you use Studio One 3.5. So just be mindful of that. But going forward, yeah, saving is going to be faster. Bouncing, there's an option to select and bounce, so you can select any audio or MIDI events and bounce it to a track very quickly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So like if you just like want to like, you know, send somebody just your drum tracks from this particular song, instead of having to mute stuff and all that stuff, you just, you know, click and drag your drums and then you can bounce them out. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
That's
correct.
awesome.
We've got automation improvements in there. And also independent recording and playback devices for Mac users. So you can select your playback audio device differently from your record audio device.
Oh, that's very cool.
Very flexible. But like I said, there are over 50 new improvements, enhancements, and features in this update. So you definitely want to take a look at the release notes once you download Studio One 3.5. That's going to detail everything that's in this update.
Right, and also like we mentioned before, if you have some ideas about a feature that you'd like to see in Studio One, remember, you know, our #1 feature that got added in Studio One 3.5 is because of the people like you that went to answers.presonus.com and voted on these features and actually, you know, created requests. So make sure you check out answers.presonus.com and have a look out there and, you know, give us some feedback, because, you know, this is one of the coolest things. This is like the community getting to drive, you know,
right.
and have a part
yeah,
in the development.
How we do our products, yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah, it's rocking.
I think that's pretty awesome.
So in a second, we're going to be right back. We're going to be, you know, taking some questions, and we're going to also be giving away some prizes. One more time with the prizes, make sure you share hashtag Studio One, all one word, just letters, with a link to the webcast. And we're going to be giving away a pair of R80s and a couple of copies of Studio One Professional. And then also right now we're going to let you check out a video from a PreSonus artist that recently recorded at our studio. All of the audio that you're going to hear was recorded with this brand new mixer, the brand new StudioLive Series 332 into Studio One. So check it out.
Past 30 and I'm feeling worried. I haven't done more with my life. When I was 15, I thought it'd be easy to conquer every dream in my path. I wanted to play guitar and possibly be a star. I thought I found my purpose in life, but here I am in my room, patiently in the womb. I'm placing notes and words on these wounds that have me feeling vulnerable. You can see straight through me. Vulnerable. You know what I really need. In your eyes I'm just as good as new, even at 30. One day the phone rang, Hop on the jet plane, play songs for men in black suits. Day after we arrived, she sang with all the guys. As I lay on a hospital bed, I read in the local news her story of breakthrough. My tragedy became a triumph. What humbled me the most, to watch her live her dream. Well, I'm the sick guy from the news, without a name. I'm vulnerable. You can see straight through me. Vulnerable, exactly where you want me to be. Slowly breaking down the walls inside. The nameless guy from the news. I look back on those years, the heartache and all the tears, searching for the praise of a man. I'll trust his sovereign hand and hold with confidence. He'll write the story he has designed, and I wouldn't trade my life. Married my lovely bride, the greatest gift that I've ever known. And now we expect a child, little ray of sunshine. I can see the handprints of God. It's got me feeling vulnerable. You can see straight through me. I'm vulnerable. I'm finally at the end of me. Here's a heart to mold as you so please. Even at 30.
All right, we are back, and that was Chris Neal, great PreSonus artist. Check him out on iTunes. I just happened to run into Eric Welch.
Hey, everybody.
Y'all give it up for him. He is the product manager for our latest product. This is the Quantum. And the Quantum is our top-of-the-line recording interface. And I'm going to give you a quick overview, and with Eric's help, of what this product is about. But why don't you tell us a little bit about just kind of what was our goal? What was PreSonus's goal in creating Quantum?
No, initially the goal was to take advantage of Thunderbolt technology, which will give us the fastest direct-to-DAW experience with the lowest latency and top sound quality and high channel counts.
That's an awesome goal to have. So let's talk about a little bit about some of the things that set this apart from any other PreSonus interface. So let's talk about converters.
Yeah, these are the best converters we've ever put in any interface. They're greater than 120 dB on the in and the out.
Wow.
So it's got a really accurate clock for great stereo imaging. Super flat frequency response on all the mic pre's, and super fast, low latency between your interface and your DAW.
Right. So, of course, this is the kind of thing that latency is one of these subjective things, and you hear this thrown around a lot. But really, the idea now is that computers have gotten so fast and so powerful that, taking advantage of the faster, latest computers.
Yeah.
I mean, you can literally get just ridiculous. Talking about channel count, what is the top channel count you can get with the Quantum?
Well, on the Quantum, just by itself, you can get 26 in by 32 out, but you can chain up to 4 of these guys together with the addition of ADAT on the back to get up to 96 I/O.
96 I/O. That's crazy. So, that's one thing that I think is really unique because at the price point that the Quantum is, there is no other Thunderbolt interface that will do 96 I/O. And also, it is the only Thunderbolt interface in this class that actually has multiple Thunderbolt jacks that support clustering, meaning you can stack multiple units together.
And not only stack multiple units, you can attach any other Thunderbolt peripheral onto your interface.
Okay, so like a hard drive or
Hard drive, a display,
okay.
any Thunderbolt peripheral you have.
So what about for PC? One of the things that we've heard a lot of complaints is Thunderbolt stuff works great for Mac, and the poor PC guys get jacked. What's the deal with PC?
Well, the deal with PC is we have custom drivers not only for Mac performance, but also for PC performance. So you get the same great Thunderbolt performance on Mac and PC with this interface.
Well, that's freaking cool. Let's take a look at some of the features. So if we take a look at the front panel, you can see that we have 2 inputs on the front panel. These can be either instrument, line level, or mic level. Now, I'm going to show you something really cool. Right now, just kind of the default, it defaults to a line level input. Now, I want to switch and let you guys take a look at the control panel for Quantum. And you can see right here on the control panel that channels 1 and 2, they're defaulted to line. Okay? And you can also choose not just a +4 line input, but also if you have a lower level line, like a consumer grade line level, you can put those on. And now you have a -10. So +4 or -10 is available. Now,
And that's on all your line inputs.
and that's on every line input. And when we say line level input, what that means is that when you plug in an external mic pre, let's say your favorite compressor, whatever that you're trying to patch into some of the inputs, you're not going through any additional preamp stages, going straight to the A to D converter. Okay, now I'm going to show you another little trick. So let's look back at the front of the Quantum here. And one of the things that I thought was really cool is that it has auto-sensing inputs on these front 2 channels. So watch this. If I take an XLR jack and I plug it into the front panel, now let's switch back to the control panel, and I'm plugging it in, and wha-bam! It knows that I have a mic input selected. Now I have gain for channel 1 and also have 48-volt phantom power. So it kind of just, it knows. It just knows, which is
And it knows
great.
not only in the control panel, those are always accessible from the hardware itself too.
Which is also a really cool thing. Okay, so the next thing you have is just kind of some analog front panel control on the Quantum. So you can see here, we've got an encoder, and I can turn up the mic pre, and I can select a different channel. The next thing that we have is talkback. Now we did a really cool thing with talkback in the Quantum, and that is the talkback is actually routable. Not just within the control panel, but also within Studio One. So we've now integrated
or any DAW actually.
or any DAW. So let's take a look. Let's open up Studio One, and why don't you show us how TalkBack is integrated now with the Quantum
Sure.
in Studio One?
Absolutely. So actually, first let's just take a look at our song setup inside of Studio One, and if you go to your inputs, you'll see that your TalkBack shows up as a dedicated stream.
Channel 27.
It's input 27 right now. So if we come back to our DAW here, and we create a new track, and let's just call this talk,
back, count 1.
and we're going to make 1. And we're going to tell the input to be
27.
talkback input.
Talkback input.
Okay. Hit OK. Now we have our talkback channel created, and we're going to monitor it.
Hey,
So
hey,
we can see
hey,
what's coming in.
hey, hey, hey. Now you can see it.
And over here on the right-hand side, we can control the gain for our talkback mic.
That's so sweet. So you don't
one
even have to
pane.
go to the front panel or open up a control panel. Just within Studio One, you can turn up the volume for the talkback. And then also, check it out. You can route talkback to any send right
That's
there.
correct.
Or
any
any
send
QMix.
or any QMix. So I could come in here and say I want talkback to go to line output 2. I need talkback to my drummer who's on mix 7, and we'll also send it to the SPDIF. So instantly your talkback is already routed.
And you have
more
level
conveniently,
controls.
you have level control, but you also have a talkback button
Right there in
right
Studio
there
One.
next to your main fader in Studio One.
That's pretty slick. Okay, so that's really nice integration inside the DAW. You know, one of the things that we tried to accomplish with the integration of the Quantum within Studio One is that you don't have to open up a control panel. You know, with a lot of other interfaces, you're juggling your DAW, and then you got to open up, you know, the control panel of your interface, and then you know you hit the space bar to hit play, but you're on, you know, you're focused on the control panel, and your DAW doesn't work, and now you got to go back. It's a big freaking pain in the butt. If you're a
Sure.
Studio One user,
You don't have to do anything. You can right
You
inside
just-
of Studio One here. If we're taking a look again, you know, I have the first 8 channels are analog inputs from Quantum,
right?
and we have 48-volt control right inside of Studio One. We have level control for the preamp inside of
Yeah,
Studio
so this
One.
is just like the Series 3 consoles and the RML consoles and the Studio 192.
Exactly.
We have total integration within Studio One for our hardware. So you can adjust your mic pre's. You can also do the same thing that I talked about with the Series 3 mixer, and that is, you know, if you want to come back a year later and recut something, the Quantum settings will go back to, you know, right where
Yeah,
you
they're
left off.
completely recallable.
Yeah, so that's pretty freaking
They're
cool.
the settings are saved inside of your DAW
Okay,
session.
that's awesome. Now let's go back. Let's before we go to the control panel, let's talk about the back panel of the Quantum. So you saw you've got a couple of inputs on the front. Let's take a look at the back. I'm going to flip this guy around. Okay. So the first thing you see here are MIDI input and output. So what if you're not using Studio One? What if you're using Cubase, Pro Tools, or Logic, but you want to be able to control the Quantum in your DAW if it's not Studio One?
Well, we've actually already got that sorted for you, and you can do it 2 ways. You can control it from your DAW using a virtual instrument to send MIDI messages to Quantum.
Like a MIDI instrument, like
Yeah,
a MIDI
exactly, just a MIDI lane,
device.
automation lane, anything
Right.
like that. Or
Right.
if you have external MIDI hardware that has encoders, you can use that as a controller
Yeah.
for Quantum.
So that's
through
pretty
the MIDI
cool.
ports.
So like if you have a keyboard controller with a bunch of knobs and you want those knobs to control the mic pre's on Quantum.
You can assign it that way.
That's pretty
inside
sweet.
of the Quantum control panel.
So now let's look at the control panel of Quantum.
In the bottom right corner here, you'll see a button that's labeled MIDI control. And under that, it's by default it's disabled, but you can set it up to be send control, receive control, or both.
Nice.
So if it's if you're not, like I said, if you're not using Studio One and you don't want to enable the control panel, you just want to work strictly from your DAW or external MIDI hardware, you can
that.
remote control the Quantum that way.
But you do need to use Studio One always.
That's right.
Because it's cool. Okay.
That's right.
So let's also talk about you know let's go back to the back panel and show them after the MIDI. You've got the dual Thunderbolt jacks, and again, like Eric said, you can use these to chain a hard drive off of it or attach multiple Quantums, up to 4 Quantums. So that's 96 channels at 44 or 48K, or it's a measly 64 channels at 96K. So, you know, you'll just have to deal with that.
For those small sessions.
For those small sessions. Then you have BNC word clock input and output, so you can slave quantum externally to
any clock you want to,
any
other
clock
device,
or you can send master clock. So if you're doing multiple quantums together and multiple DP88s, for example, you can have everybody talking by using the BNC jacks. Okay, the next thing you have is SPDIF input and output, and within the control panel of the quantum, let's go back to that. You can see that you have a little option here where the SPDIF mirrors the main. So now, if you want whatever's coming out of your main output to also be mirrored in the SPDIF, you put that on.
And that's useful if you wanted to use you needed to send it into an external converter digitally before you monitored it.
Right.
Or if you just needed to send a separate source to somewhere else. It's also your main.
Or, I would use this with my central station. My central station has SPDIF input, and, this would be great. I'd go SPDIF out of this into a central station, and, now my main output is feeding that, and, wha-bam. Okay, so the next thing that we have here is your outputs. Now, notice something on the quantum. You have a separate pair of main outputs, and then you have 8 additional outputs. That's a total of 10 discrete outputs, each with their own stream, which is really cool. And then you have 6 additional mic line inputs, and like Eric had said, the line inputs are dedicated line inputs.
Direct to the converter.
Direct to the converter. So if you have a lot of outboard gear you want to use, the quantum is great for that. Now, the other thing that's kind of cool, I'm going to flip him back around, is I guess I can lose my little pigtail here. Okay, so headphone outputs. These headphone outputs each have separate streams. They have their own DACs. So these can be basically 2 completely independent mixes. So if you have 2 different musicians, you want them to have completely separate headphone mixes, you can do that. Okay, so that's basically the physical inputs and outputs. Let's go back and show a couple more things on the control panel. Okay, so now on the control panel, one of the cool things is, remember, the main knob that's on the front of the quantum controls the main output pair of the main output jacks. Okay, so you always have the main knob controlling your main outputs, but let's say I'm, doing 5.1, I can go ahead and enable 6 more outputs. So now that main knob will control the main outputs, but it'll also bring up and down the level of outputs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or if I'm doing 7.1 surround, I can actually have that main knob control all of the outputs. So up to 10 outputs can be controlled with the main knob, and then of course you can decide what you want it to control. So it's very, very powerful. Now, the other thing that I really dig about the quantum is these couple of different views. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my talkback mic on. Yo. Okay, so you can see I've got, remember the talkback, we had routed it, but check this out. On any input or any output, you also have, boom, an RTA. So if I go ahead and click on any output, wha-bam, now we have RTA for whatever input or output you want. So, even if you don't have a plugin that has RTA, you don't have to worry about a plugin. It's right here in the control panel. You can look at every input, every output. And then tell us about this little section down here at the bottom.
Sure. Well, this is your main output metering here. By default, it's set to peak, so it's a peak level meter. It's going to show you peak on the end, and then it's going to give you an RMS indication as well. But this is configurable, so you can look at it in K metering, similar to the Studio One mastering side of things, or even in EBU
Loudness.
if you like.
Loudness, broadcast standard.
And that can go between 0 and plus 18.
So sweet.
For your monitoring. And then if you'll notice down here in the bottom right corner, we also added a correlation meter, so you can check your phase on any input or output.
Nice.
And then the RTA itself, the metering, is completely configurable. You can control the height of the increments, you can set your range, you can set your hold and averaging time. So you can get really accurate readings of what your inputs or outputs are actually doing without having to go anywhere else other than the control panel.
So this is really great for guys that are doing field kind of high, really high level recording. You can really see what you're recording, you know, and again, it's not a plug-in, it's running off of the Quantum, so it's really great. So US street price on the Quantum is under $1,000, it's $999. This is a ridiculous, redonkulous price for what this thing does. And basically, you know, the expandability is just unbelievable. So, you know, when you're talking about making an investment, you know, into a platform that'll allow you to grow, you know, you might only be recording 8 inputs at a time right now, but, you know, or you might be recording, you know, 96 inputs at a time, you know, who knows? So it's very, very scalable.
Absolutely.
And that's the other thing that's really great. And if you're a Studio One professional user, it's completely integrated within the DAW, talkback, preamp control, all fully recallable, Quantum.
Quantum preamps, and in addition to that integration, all the outputs on Quantum are DC coupled as well.
Aha!
I just wanted to sneak that in there. And for anybody that's asking what that actually means,
Arndt Kaiser likes this.
He loves
this.
He'll give you a demo. There's a video.
Yes.
But for any of you guys that don't know what that is, if you're analog gearheads, you have analog synth somewhere, you can actually send control voltage from any output on the Quantum to the gate input or the CV control on your analog synthesizer and control it from within your DAW.
Yeah, that's super slick. So Quantum is rocking. It is going to be shipping worldwide very soon, within the next couple of weeks. It's actually on the way right now, so we're really excited about it. So we're going to watch another little quick thing, and then Dom is going to be back, and we're going to give away some prizes. We're going to take some Q&A, so stick around with us. Also, please share the link here. So it's hashtag Studio One with the link to today's webcast. It's the last shot to share it, and you know, we're going to pick 3 winners for a pair of R80s and also 2 copies of Studio One Professional. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Thanks.
The speed of sound. It roars through our atmosphere at an incredible 767 miles per hour. Working with sound creatively means breaking barriers and gaining speed. Do you have what it takes to keep up?
All right, we are back. So thank you guys for sticking in and hanging with us. It's been a big day.
Yeah, it has. Very exciting.
We've released a lot of new things. Also wanted to just mention real quick, if you are a Notion user, today we also are releasing a new version of Notion, version 6.2.
Yes.
And this also has some improvements now with Studio One. Tell us about
a couple
of those.
We mentioned some of those before with Studio One. It's going to improve the integration between Notion and Studio One in terms of sending note data between Studio One and Notion, as well as sending audio stems and being able to update them, being able to update existing documents and that sort of thing. So look out for the, go to your PreSonus account to download Notion 6.2 today. You can also look at the release notes so you can see all of the new features and enhancements as well as bug fixes. So
it's huge. So for Studio One guys, there's a new version of Studio One. It is available right this second. All you have to do is go to my.presonus.com, log into your account, download the latest version. Let's take a couple questions, and we're going to give away some prizes.
Yeah, excellent. Sounds
okay. Somebody asked a question regarding the new version, version 3.5. Can I have the older version, 3.3.4, and version 3.5 on my system and use one or the other for different projects?
Yeah, the answer to that is definitely, this is something I actually do because I test a lot of new versions of unreleased Studio One, along with using the current version of Studio One for projects. Studio One has the unique ability of being able to let you have multiple versions installed on your computer at one time, so you can flip-flop between the two versions. Say maybe you have older projects on the
An older
older
version.
version of Studio One that you want to kind of keep there, but you want to test out the new features, without damaging those older
Right.
products. So definitely, you can do that on Mac as well as PC.
Sweet. Okay. Next question. Let's see. Okay, this is talking about the VU meter. Has the VU meter been updated to EBU? I believe that's the European standard.
Right, correct. So everything about the meters that you know is still there. We just added the EBU standards, the LU, the loudness units, LUFS, R128 metering options to that. So we're just adding to the metering as well as the spectrum meter. So we didn't take away anything, but only enhanced it.
Very cool. So answer is yes. All right. So let's give away a copy of Studio One Pro.
Sounds
Can I have a drum roll, please? And the winner of one of our versions of Studio One Professional is Maddie Trump. Maddie Trump.
Congratulations,
Right on,
Maddie.
Maddie. All right. Okay. So let's take some more questions.
All right.
This is a good one. This is regarding the new mixer undo feature. There's a couple of questions regarding this. One, somebody asked, Adam asked, does mixer undo work on third-party plugins as well as Studio One plugins? And the answer is
Yes. Yes. Works on all of your plugins.
all of your plugins. Now, one thing to note, there are some plugins that have their own, undo feature
Right,
within the plugin, but all of the plugins that we've tested with thus far that don't have their own undo, Studio One will work with the mixer undo for those plugins as
Right.
well.
And if you have any plugins that don't seem to work correctly, please let us know. Of course, there's answers.presonus.com where you can let us know your feature requests, anything that may be broken. Just give us feedback. We definitely are listening.
Right on. And that's the other thing, with regards to a new version. Obviously, we have beta testers all over the world, and we probably have 100 people that are beta testers that are testing this new version with
Right.
a bunch of different plugins. But obviously, there's tens of thousands, maybe hundreds
Right.
of thousands of plugins and different computer configurations, so there's no way to test them all. But if you do find a particular plugin's not working right, please let us know. And you can also let us know at support.presonus.com, or just log into your My PreSonus account. There's a place that you can report a bug, and we would love to know about that.
Definitely.
Okay, let's talk about some other questions. Let's see. My good buddy Brent Handy. How does the new dual latency audio engine affect monitoring tracks when you're doing an overdub? This is a really good question. So let's say I start a session, and most of the time when you have just a couple of tracks, latency is not a big problem. But let's say I have 48 tracks now recorded, and a singer comes in and says, we want to recut this vocal. And let's say on those 48 tracks, we have tons of plugins running. We have virtual instruments now. We're kind of at the end of the song. Well, as opposed to the old way where you only had one, essentially one latency that was kind of, you had to kind of, settle for one for both applications. Right. Now, as soon as you record enable a track, Studio One will automatically give that track low latency monitoring while giving the rest of your 48 tracks a higher latency so that you can run more plugins, and that makes your CPU more efficient.
Right, definitely.
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
So, and this is another point. I said something earlier about the fact that, or you said it maybe, that we addressed the #1 feature requests in that we got from customers at answers.presonus.com. Come to find out, we've actually addressed 4 of the top 10. So another one of those fixes was exactly this: is CPU overloads and that kind of a thing. We've done a lot of work to multi-core processing in this new update, especially if you have a multi-core computer. Studio One now is even going to be optimized to take better sort of advantage of multi-core processing. So you're going to notice this most specifically, can't talk today, on big projects, and you're going to notice it
Yes.
also on things that take up a lot of CPU, like virtual instruments, sessions with a lot of virtual instruments. Okay, let's give away another copy of
Awesome.
Studio One Professional.
Who's it going to be?
It's going to be, drum roll, the Sounds UV Now. The Sounds UV Now, you just won a new copy of Studio One Professional. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Okay, let's talk. Take a couple more questions on
Okay.
Quantum. A couple of people wanted to know about Quantum. One question: can you use Quantum with Capture? The answer is technically Capture is only available for StudioLive mixers, so you don't get Capture when you get the Quantum. However, with the Quantum in Studio One Artist, which comes with it, and then also we have a special upgrade price for Quantum customers to be able to get a very, very low price when they upgrade to Studio One Professional. If you're using any version of Studio One, there is a Quantum template, and when you load that Quantum template, it creates all of the tracks that match up with your Quantum or multiple Quantums. It'll record enable them, it'll name everything, and it basically will work exactly like Capture. It'll actually create the tracks, record, enable them, and your next button is recording and recording. So there is, the funny thing is Capture actually is a subset of Studio One.
Right.
So if you have Studio One, you actually have Capture. And if you set up your session using one of our templates, like for example, we include in the new version of 3.5, there is a Quantum template. You basically load that template and you're ready to record just like you would be with Capture. Okay, another question from somebody talking about, are there any advantages of using the Quantum over my StudioLive RM32 AI in my studio? That's a great question. So there's a few things that you're going to get with Quantum that you don't have on the StudioLive, and vice versa. First of all, the main difference is that the Quantum is using Thunderbolt 2 technology. Right. So if you are ever tracking with plugins, like if you want to basically, like we showed earlier, on your input, you want to actually have a plugin running in real time while you're tracking, Thunderbolt will give you much better latency for that application than FireWire 800 will. Okay, so that's one difference. The second difference is that if you want to record at higher sampling rates, the Quantum will do up to 192K sampling rate, whereas the RM mixers do up to 96K. The last difference is expandability. Now, the RM mixers are expandable to up to 64 tracks, which is a lot, or 64 analog inputs. So if you have an RM32 and you needed more tracks simultaneously, you could buy an RM16 or an RM32, chain them together. Now you have either 48 or 64 inputs, all recording at the same time. With the Quantum, like we said before, you can go up to 96 channels of audio simultaneously. So if 64 channels is not enough, the Quantum is the way. But a couple of the other differences. The Quantum does have the control panel. It is a little bit different, like we showed. You have the RTA, you have the surround sound monitoring option, where you can, if you're monitoring for surround, you can enable all of the outputs to work with that main knob. So there's a few differences like this. Now the RM mixer also has a few advantages. The one being is that you can use it standalone without a computer as a mixer. So I mean, I can take it to a gig, throw a wireless router on it, and mix with an iPad. With the Quantum, you do have to be connected to a computer, although I think there is a standalone mode that the Quantum does.
Not really.
Okay, not really. So Quantum, you'd have to be hooked into a computer. With the RM mixer, you don't, if you're using it in a live application. So I hope that answers the question. So they're both great for recording, but there's a few advantages that each of them have. Okay.
Awesome.
Should we give away the big prize?
Let's do it.
Let's give away the big prize. So this is for a pair of the new PreSonus R80 studio monitors with the AMT ribbon tweeters.
Yeah, I
These are
love those
freaking
monitors.
so sweet. These are the blue ones. By the way, the cool thing about these monitors is that if you know, some people really like the blue face because it's like, "Rah!" You know, it kind of like screams at you. But we also include a black faceplate in the box. So if you're more into that kind of just subdued, I want my monitors to kind of just be in the background, you get both faceplates with the R80 monitors. So the lucky winner of the R80 monitors, drum roll please, is Scratchin' Jackson. Scratchin' Jackson, congratulations. You're going to be scratching with some R80s now. So, okay.
Awesome.
I think we're getting to the end of the road here, and just make sure that I didn't skip anything. Still got a ton of questions. And by the way, guys, we're going to be on the chat. We've got some PreSonus employees that are going to be there answering questions. So hopefully we'll get to everybody's questions. But once again, Studio One version 3.5 available today. Notion 6.2 available today.
Yes.
The new Quantum recording interface shipping next month. So they're actually on the way right now to dealers worldwide. So you'll see them in stores next month. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm Rick Knockby.
And I'm Dominic Bazil.
And we'll see you next time on PreSonus Live. Thanks.
The speed of sound. It roars through our atmosphere at an incredible 767 miles per hour. Working with sound creatively means breaking barriers and gaining speed. Do you have what it takes to keep up?